Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today titled AP Made Easy, Automate Your Processes with Open Imaging Integration in PeopleSoft. We're excited to have you here today and think we have some great information to present to you. A couple housekeeping items just to start off. All of your lines are on mute for the entire webinar. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit them through your portal on the right-hand side of your screen. That way we can collect them and answer all the questions at the end. We will leave time for Q&A. We will also be recording the entire webinar today and be sending that to your email addresses that you registered with. And if there's anybody else that you'd like to receive it from your organization, please just let us know. We're happy to send that out. Throughout the presentation today, there will be a couple of poll questions. We definitely encourage you to participate in these, and that will give us a better idea of the audience that's on the phone and how we can help you out best. So we'll go ahead and get started here with some introductions. My name is Sarah Bougie, and I'm with Elire. I'm a business development manager here. And on the phone with Elire here as well, I have Patrick Gahagan. Patrick, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Gahagan. I'm a senior consultant within our Strategic Advisory Services division. I'll be covering a lot of the information today about the business process end of things and how you can leverage some best practices along with technology to streamline your AP operations. Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. I'm Lisa Thorne, Channel Development Manager for Canon Information and Imaging Solutions, and I work very closely with my partner, which is Elire. And then Joe.
Thank you, Lisa. My name is Joseph Gademi. I am in charge of technical training for CIIS. I work very closely with Lisa and as well as with all our partners. I will be handling most of the specific details regarding our solution that we'll be discussing today.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. With a brief introduction here of Elire, we'll start out. Elire was established in 2005. We're celebrating 12 years of business this year. We're a full-service consulting firm, so we provide strategic guidance to our organizations across the country in relation to PeopleSoft, strategic ERP services, strategic advisory services, so helping out with different business roadmaps, business process evaluations, decision point analysis, and everything else. So we're partnering with Canon on this opportunity, and I'll pass it over to Lisa to introduce Canon.
Thank you. Most of you are familiar with Canon for many years from a multifunction printer or camera standpoint, and yes, that's the same Canon. They are our parent company. They were established in the U.S. in 1969. Our America's headquarters is located in Melville, New York, which is Long Island. And one of the things we're particularly proud of at Canon is, as a technology innovator, we're often ranked in the very top few patent holders each year. And last year in 2016, we were ranked third, having almost 3,700 patents filed. So Canon is very big on research and development, of course. So Canon Information and Imaging Solutions was created in 2011 to bring to market solutions that leverage the new imaging technologies, as well as Canon's strong experience in business process automation and document solutions. We provide research and development, add in our technology, and a customer-focused delivery process, which leads us to not just developing innovative solutions, but value-added, future-focused solutions. So, our goal in this part of Canon, CIIS as we call ourselves, is to bring together Canon's best-in-class imaging and technology information management expertise. We were very pleased this year to receive an award from the Institute of Finance and Management. We received the Game Changer Award, and this showcases companies that provide the most productive and effective technologies and meet the highest standards of design, ease of use, and conformance with appropriate accounting standards. So we are very, very proud to be honored by the Institute of Finance and Management. Moving along to Joe, I believe. That's it for me? Oh, Patrick, sorry.
Yep. Well, so thank you for those introductions, Lisa and Sarah. So obviously, why all of you are here today is to find out, as the webinar was titled, how to make your AP a little bit easier. But let's talk about first why a lot of organizations are looking at doing this, right? So, you'll see a few reasons here that a lot of corporations are looking at automating some of these business processes. Obviously, with AP typically looked at as a cost center, how can we either minimize that cost or actually turn it into a profit center? So I'll just touch on a couple of these here, which is that first one, you show that only 56.6% of organizations say that they process their invoices straight through. Only less than 6% of their invoices straight through. So that means everything from extracting the data, keying it into the system, approvals, whether or not you can put things through 2- or 3-way match. And what we'll help you do, what we'll talk about today is how we can help you automate that extraction process and build smart business rules into your system that will allow you to process invoices without being touched all the way from receipt into payment. The other thing I'd like to talk about here is that bottom left here of only 48% of invoices that are handled manually are paid on time. So obviously with all of the manual effort that it often takes to receive an invoice, code each of its items, all of its line items, get it into your ERP system and approved, those time delays can often cost you money in either late payment fees or, as the bottom part of that graphic says, even if you're not late, if you're not able to take advantage of early payment discounts, we want to speed up that process to allow you to do that. Lastly, one thing that a couple of the other items are talking about here is that we want to obviously minimize errors and provide visibility. Obviously, if you can imagine, depending on the volume of your invoices, the manual effort that goes into most organizations keying their invoices today, and we'll look at how we can do that extraction through technology, you can drastically minimize the amount of errors that are provided in your invoices, since the smart technology allows you to not only extract but verify that information before it actually enters into your ERP system. So we'll be talking today about what of these types of problems exist within your organizations. I think we have a couple poll questions that we'll be asking related to that. So with that, we're going to go into talking a little bit about how Elire will help tailor the solution to your needs of your organization. And I think we'll actually start out here with a poll question now.
Thanks, Patrick. So our first poll question here today is, are you currently running version PeopleSoft 9.2, PUM 18, or greater? A couple different answers for you. Yes on PeopleSoft 9.2, PUM 18. No on PeopleSoft 9.2, but not yet on PUM 18. No on PeopleSoft 9.1 or a previous version. And no, do not utilize a PeopleSoft system. We'll give you a couple seconds here to answer. And it looks like the majority of you are on 9.2, but not yet on PUM 18 or greater. We'll hand it back to Patrick.
Excellent. And the reason that we asked that question, of course, is the technology that we're going to be looking at today is delivered in 9.2, full functionality in PUM 18. I think you can take advantage of some of the features a little bit earlier, but what we're going to talk about today is actually one of the reasons that this solution is so heavily favored by Elire, and why we partner with Canon is because of the way that PeopleSoft has changed its delivery model. And that's what we're going to start out with talking about here. So for all of you on the call that are on PeopleSoft, you do know that with PeopleSoft 9.2, it was really a game changer in how technology is going to be delivered to you in the future, right? So it used to be that you would deliver, or you would go through these quite large and somewhat painful upgrades every few years, maybe 3, 5, or longer. And now with the new model of continuous delivery or selective adoption through the PUM Update Manager, what we're seeing, or the PeopleSoft Update Manager, is we're seeing a lot more iterative processes as far as technology goes. So PeopleSoft is now delivering images about 6 to 7 times a year. So images are going to be smaller releases. They're going to release new features, new updates, bug fixes And you're really seeing a lot of great new technology as each one of these is released. And so what Elire is looking to all of our partners to do is really start coming up with a plan to take these PUM updates, probably not 6 to 7 times a year. We talk about frequency a little bit more in the coming slides, but you can actually choose when to update, how much to update, and to a certain degree you can start selecting the different pieces of technology that you'd like to leverage. So really what we're looking at is a more iterative and less of that big painful upgrade process. But that means that there's a lot of new, while there's pros to this new process, there's definitely a little different landscape that needs to be taken into account as we move forward. So what's changed, right? So as we start looking at 9.2, you get these multiple small releases, and you're not doing these big upgrades. What we need to focus on is this feature development and this idea that long term we're going to be wanting to remove our customizations, right? So as you look at the process of bringing in new technology, you're going to want to leverage the Update Manager to figure out when what's changing and how to accept the technology more effectively. And that's going to come with removal of customizations and figuring out how to have less disruption in your business. So as you leverage your product team to figure out what technology you want to implement, you'll need to look at each of the new features and stay current. And one of the reasons that the Canon solution that we're going to be talking about today is so great is it actually has a very low impact on your PUM process because it uses a set of delivered web services that Joe's going to be talking about in a little bit here. So why we like the open imaging integration? As I said, it's all about reducing your adoption rate. So as these PUM updates come each year, and our team would help you kind of identify the process by which you want to release them. Some organizations are doing one PUM update a year, some are doing more like 2 or 3, and it's really about figuring out what that best process is going to be for you, always with the goal of reducing your adoption rate, reducing the amount of effort it takes you to receive each PUM, and that's going to come from a few different factors. So first and foremost, you as an organization want to look at decreasing your level of customization. So you'd start by figuring out what's customized in your environment if you don't already know that, and finding out what the total cost of ownership is, right? So as each one of these PUM updates comes out, anything that's customized within your system is going to have to be analyzed and reapplied. So what we'd help you do is figure out how to either remove those customizations, and if they're ones that are helping your business a lot, we would look at moving them into bolt-ons or less invasive customizations. And then once you have your customization level lowered, what you want to do is start looking at your test scripts and how we can test more effectively. So because you're going to be doing testing a lot more, again, if you go back to thinking about your previous model where you were doing testing, with every big upgrade every 5 years, now you might be doing it 1 or 2 or 3 times a year. So figuring out how to reuse test scripts, continually improve them, and lastly, reduce the test script execution time. So there's a great new tool in PeopleSoft called the PeopleSoft Test Framework, which actually allows you to build these test scripts and then automate the execution of them, really lowering the amount of time it takes you to implement and test a new PUM update. And with that, as I said, the reason that we are at Elire such a big fan of the Canon solution is it leverages something called the open imaging integration. As our poll question alluded to, this was released in PUM 18 of PeopleSoft Financials 9.2, and it allows you to integrate an imaging system into PeopleSoft payables and e-settlements. Now, what we actually are looking at here is a set of web services that could technically be leveraged by any system. However, Canon actually co-developed this along with Oracle and PeopleSoft and built the integration and is leveraging it in an extremely effective way to utilize the solution that we're going to be talking about more today. But it is a validated integration and has very little impact from a customization standpoint. So what it's going to allow you to do, though, is extract information from invoices and directly put them into PeopleSoft to create a voucher. It's actually going to also allow you to bring the invoice image itself right into PeopleSoft and be placed within the related content screen, which Joe is going to show you in a little bit. It's going to allow you to validate all of your data against PeopleSoft. So when we're extracting this data, we're going to actually validate it against your vendor master, your POs, your receipts, and we're doing all of that through these web services without having to duplicate data, right? And that's a key aspect to this. You're not having to dump all the data and have sync issues. These are all going to be looked at real time through the web services. You'll be able to access your supplier information, your purchase order information, your line item information, all in real time as you're processing an invoice. And then we're also going to, as I said, be able to attach those right within PeopleSoft themselves, which is, again, one of those differentiators that I think you're going to really be impressed with when Joe shows you that screen. And then the last part of this is that it actually goes in and creates that voucher in PeopleSoft. So a lot of solutions, leverage big neutral tables or custom integrations to do that. But the open imaging integration allows you to actually load right into the voucher staging table and run voucher build within PeopleSoft. So this is a new integration, and it's also one that I think we're seeing a lot of interest in as we move forward, and something that Canon built with Oracle that's just a game changer in our perspective. So.
All right, that brings us to the second poll of the webinar. How many invoices does your organization process? 1 to 1,000 a month, 1,000 to 5,000 a month, 5,000 to 15,000 a month, 15,000 to 30,000 a month, or more than 30,000 a month? We'll give you some time to answer here. It looks like the majority of you are 1,000 to 5,000, but still quite a few that have the 5,000 to 15,000 as well.
Great. And the reason we asked that is just so that we can start, when Joe starts talking about how the solution works, we can talk about scalability. So I think with that, we're going to turn it over to Joe to start talking a little bit more about the solution itself.
Thank you, Patrick. As Patrick mentioned earlier, when he was discussing the statistics on why automate, I think you can see how a typical manual process or a paper-driven process, it's filled with numerous pitfalls. It's error-prone, it's time-consuming, and it lacks transparency. Well, our solution, because we're an automated solution, we eliminate that. We eliminate the manual process. We eliminate the fact that it's paper-driven, and we add many benefits. You can see the list here. I'll only touch on a few of them. But obviously, we are a digitized, transparent AP process, which provides for faster invoice processing and approvals. And it should be noted that we are non-template based. We'll discuss this as we go further into the presentation. But we can receive invoices regardless of their layout or format, because we can. It's not based on a set template. We are reading the invoice as we go. We also have the ability to train the system or help the system to learn to better read these invoices as they're imported into the system. The connected and standardized process. No more isolated systems. We're adding efficiency. We're adding to the compliance. And the last bullet point there is a very important one. We have a built-in content repository, an embedded Oracle database in the solution, which is accessible to non-AP users, ERP users, and adds for better content management, better document management. And as Patrick also just mentioned, it's a solution for growth. It's scalable, it's flexible, it includes a robust capture piece that we'll be discussing earlier, and it uses any scanners. We are Canon, obviously, but the solution is device agnostic, as you'll see, and it works with any of your current infrastructure. And of course, the Canon brand. It's built on trust and partnerships. We own, develop, and support all of the technologies that you're going to see in this solution. Here's a high level of our AP automated solution. And you can see right away that it's a process that is streamlined, transparent, and it's accurate because it's not paper driven. Just to start from the left-hand side, the invoices are received through scan or email. Business critical data is then extracted from those invoices using an OCR process, an optical character recognition process. That extracted data is then validated against the master data that comes directly from PeopleSoft. It's provided in a simple-to-use interface then for a user for simple verification. Once verified, you have an optional electronic approval and workflow process within the solution. But if you so choose, of course, you could still use the workflow process within PeopleSoft if that's the direction you want to follow. But regardless of where the workflow is performed, a voucher is ultimately created in PeopleSoft, and the invoice image is indexed, referenced, archived, and it's searchable from within the embedded content repository that I spoke of a moment ago.
Thanks, Joe. That brings us to our third poll question. Does your organization leverage PeopleSoft workflow? Yes, we're happy with it. Yes, but we're not happy with it. No, we're considering using it, or no, would prefer an alternative. It looks like the majority of you are no, but are considering using it. So quite a few are you using it as well. Go back to you, Joe.
Thank you. I mentioned that OCR process earlier, that optical character recognition. Well, as I mentioned, our solution is non-template based. So regardless of the layout or the format of the invoice, we can capture that business critical data in a streamlined extraction process. You also have the ability to train the solution, as I mentioned, help the solution learn so all subsequent invoices can flow freely and easily. And again, the data is not just being extracted, but it's being validated against PeopleSoft master data. This is a critical piece. You're ensuring a high level of accuracy by doing this. Things like your purchasing information, your vendor information is being cross-checked and makes exception handling very simple. Our AP solution works with invoices regardless of the method they're received. Invoices can be scanned to a monitored folder and then imported. And as I mentioned, and it's worth noting again, that despite the fact that we are Canon, the solution is device agnostic. It works with any manufacturer, any maker model. But the invoices can be scanned to a monitored folder and then imported. The invoices can also be emailed to a monitored mailbox or monitored mailboxes, where the solution will then import the attachment from the email, be it a PDF or an Office document, or even import an invoice from the body of an email.
Brings us to our fourth poll question here. How does your organization receive invoices currently? Select all that apply. Email, paper, fax, or EDI. All right, and it looks like the majority is still actually on paper, followed closely by email for everyone. A good mix across the board, though.
Yeah, those are good responses, and our solution obviously works with any of those possibilities. Here you see an actual developed URL screen, a user interface screen that can be provided if, for example, the workflow may be performed within our solution. You see various pieces of information here like the invoice number, supplier number, all with links that you can click on. If you click on the actual invoice number, you can go into a specific detail. On the far right-hand side of the screen, I want to point out that status line. This list can be tailored so that it can be role-based, so users only see the invoices that are appropriate based on what their job function happens to be. I could select any invoice from this particular list. I also have an advanced search, as you see at the top, if I wanted to tailor this list even more specifically based on a date range or based on status or based on some sort of criteria that you want to set. I could also output that resulting list to an Excel spreadsheet. But right now, I would click, if I'm coming in to approve a particular invoice, I would click on that invoice number to access the invoice detail. On the invoice details screen, in addition to seeing things like workflow log, where I can see a time and date stamped and user stamped record of when everything was done within the system, when the information was extracted, when it was placed in the repository. I can also see the actual extracted information, the name, address of the supplier, invoice date, amounts, things like that, as well as line items if it's a PO-based invoice, or GL detail if it's a non-PO-based invoice. But I also have access to that stored content, that repository that I spoke of earlier, the embedded repository. So I can actually see an invoice image that's stored here. In addition, a collaboration feed, is also available. You can enter internal comments. You can carry those comments over. You can also add comments if you're approving an invoice in the workflow. This collaboration can provide for an added level of communication amongst my team. Once approved, you'll notice the particular invoice on the right-hand side under status now says the voucher log has been created. This adds another benefit within the solution. Now when I access the invoice detail, I actually have a link that I can click on that will access directly to that voucher within the PeopleSoft application. Now, I've been mentioning the workflow, and I've called it an optional workflow because the workflow can be performed within our solution, or it can still be performed within PeopleSoft if you so desire. But it should be noted that the optional workflow in our solution can be accomplished remotely via multiple platforms. It can be accomplished on mobile devices, tablets, smartphones, what have you. Since the notifications that are sent for approvals, they're in the form of emails. So a user could simply reply to that email, to approve. They could use one of a series of approved words that are set up by the customer to approve that email. So this provides a flexible workflow with secure, traceable approvals. Once I'm in PeopleSoft, I have the ability to access related content through direct access with our ERP application, which you see anchored to the PeopleSoft screen. So no more jumping between applications to get the information that's so critical to business efficiency. From within one single screen, I can see my voucher that was created and all the associated information, and I can also access related content, or it's more specifically in this case, the invoice image from our EIP repository. That related content adds for much improved document and content management. Features include things like adding more related content, checking in, checking out, version control, sharing via email, downloading documents to the repository, and of course full text search of the repository. Through this EIP access within PeopleSoft, you also have access to that enabled collaboration feed that we saw earlier. So you can do things like creating tasks, adding notes, providing for that much more improved communication that we desperately need. And this related content feature can be accessed throughout PeopleSoft. It can give you access on your supplier screens, on your purchase order screens, just to name a few. Here you see on the right-hand side, anchored, there's my collaboration feed. Comments can be added, tasks, as well as my attached content, where I can add further content or access an image of content already stored in the repository.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe. I think that was an excellent overview of the solution and some, its high-level capabilities. We're going to switch quickly over to the implementation plan, a little bit about how you would go about implementing this Canon solution. So at Elire, what we want to, obviously all of this automation that we've been talking about, all of the technology and how it can be leveraged is awesome. And what we want to make sure that we do as we implement it is implement the actual software itself, but identify any opportunities we can for process improvement. You've heard a lot of talk about how the invoice is scanned in and extracts data and how it's going to be verified against your PeopleSoft master data. So we want to make sure that that process and the data it's matching against supports the process and supports the automation efforts. We also want to, we asked that question earlier about those of you that were leveraging the approval workflows, and if you wanted to continue to either utilize PeopleSoft or if you wanted to leverage the approval workflows in EIP, both of which are excellent solutions. But we would want to help develop those approval workflows, make sure that you're leveraging best practices. If you can do three-way match, that you're doing it. If you can do a two-way match and minimize some of your approvals on PO-related invoices, that you're doing that, but that you're also meeting any compliance or regulatory requirements that your organization has. So we would help you look at that. We want to help you design reporting and dashboards and notifications to both serve your AP, your accounting teams, but also your business approvers. We find that as we look at these solutions, we find that a lot of people are saying, well, I need to be in that approval chain because I need to know that this is happening. And we can help provide that visibility without slowing down approvals, without delaying payments, and building people great dashboards and views to see anything that they want to see. And then, of course, with any of these changes, it's not just about the technology solution, but making sure that you're communicating that change to your larger organization. They're providing training on the new process and the new way things are working, and that you're not just doing that for the AP team that's going to receive invoices differently, but also that you're doing it for all of those people that are approving invoices in the community. The new screens are going to see, especially if you're, like many of you would be leveraging PeopleSoft workflow for the first time. So the message here is obviously that we just don't want to lift and shift this technology. We want to improve along the way and make sure that the technology is able to be leveraged to its fullest capacity. So what we would typically do at Elire is we would start out with the Canon team in hosting a series of what we call Blue Skies future state design sessions. So how do you want things to work? How would things work optimally? And what we do is we pair both our AP subject matter experts, our business process team, and the Canon team that understands how their software works to collect organizations and figure out how this solution can best fit and work within your organization. And we just provided a quick client example there on the right side of how we worked with one of our clients to that we've implemented the solution to gather requirements within different areas and then align them to fit within the framework of the Canon solution, which is, of course, very flexible, but making sure that we're not just installing a vanilla system that works out of the box, but works to fit your specific needs, whether that be within something like energy or higher education or really any industry. But everyone has slight nuances that we want to make sure that we capture before we go straight into build. So as you can see here, this is kind of a high-level design of how we would look to implement the the software solution at your organization. And of course, it starts with a discovery phase, making sure that we understand any process documentation that you have, any improvements that you're hoping to make, what your implementation timeline is, and what your knowledge transfer and what expected impact to your user population we're looking at. So then we, as I said, we go through the analysis phase. We help understand your specific requirements within your organization through a collaborative work effort, both with your AP team and your key business stakeholders. And then once we have that, obviously, we build a design document, requirements document, and we really go into build and implementation. And as we said, we really believe in making sure that we do a robust knowledge transfer, UAT process, and training at the end. We also would, if your organization requires it, we would provide project management, and obviously throughout the whole process we would want to implement new and improved business processes. Again, while all technology solutions, are great, we want to make sure that we're not just looking at this technology, that we're looking at your entire business process to streamline that and effectively use the technology. And I think Joe was going to cover a little bit about what this, the different levers that could be pulled to implement the solution at your organization and how it would impact the project.
Certainly, Patrick. Thank you. Yes, Patrick did an excellent job there of describing sort of the solution delivery process and all the different people from both Elire side and Canon side that work together with the customer to accomplish these goals. Our project management team, business analysts, engineers, and ultimately trainers like myself. But there are many factors that are involved when an engagement like this is an undertaking. For example, a volume of invoices. How many invoices is the customer processing monthly and ultimately yearly? Of those invoices, we also get involved in breaking them down. How many of those invoices are multi-page invoices, where there may be a single invoice page followed by supporting documents that also have to be imported into the solution? What percentage of those invoices are PO-based as compared to non-PO based? We ask a lot of detailed, involved questions to really get to the heart of this engagement. Invoice receipt channels. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but predominantly, do you get your invoices by email? And if you do, are they PDF attachments? Are they Office doc attachments? Are they in the body of the email? Are they paper documents? What quality of paper documents? Because obviously we look for a certain level of quality on these invoices to get the extracted results that we expect. And EDI and other formats that you may be receiving your invoices. Currently, how is the vendor master maintenance of the customer? How many vendors are in the master data? Are they up to date? Are they all current? How many are sort of outdated vendors that are no longer being used? Future state of workflow needs. Are you happy with your current workflow process? We don't just bring in our solution and try to hammer in your current method into our solution. We also try to incorporate best practices, business analysts that can help bring your business to another level while still meeting all of your specific needs. And then, of course, things like availability of data, those key tables that we need access to. Patrick mentioned earlier about the web services. We need to be able to access this key data to be able to have the system perform at its peak level. And of course, the alignment of key departments. We want to accomplish not just importing or implementing a solution. We want to break down those silos. We want to add to your communication. We want to get those key people armed with the information they need simultaneously. So we want to we don't want any more isolated systems. We want a unified, aligned business department. And those are just a few of the factors that are going into play here when we're talking about an engagement such as this. As I mentioned, it's not a matter of us telling you how the solution works. We want to know how your business works, what pain points you're experiencing, so we can take those and we can apply them to our solution, and we can work cohesively as a group, Canon, Elire, and the customer, to make this the perfect engagement.
Thanks, Jill. And we're having a few issues here with our slides, so we're going to launch into our last poll question here. Do you think this solution could benefit your organization? Yes or no? Awesome, and 100% of you said yes, which is wonderful. So we only had a few other slides here just detailing out both Elire and Canon's presence coming up at an upcoming Quest conference called Reconnect next week in Chicago. So we'll make sure that we send out all the slide decks to all of you who attended as well, but we'll go ahead and launch right into Q&A here. And the first question that we'll cover here is, can there be multiple invoices attached to one email?
Yep, so I can, Joe, feel free to jump in, but I'll touch on that. There can be multiple invoices on one email. There can be multiple invoices in one PDF. What the solution actually does is it puts invoices into a what's called a separation queue if it thinks that there are many invoices inside of one file. If 10 files are attached to one email, it could, if they're all single-page invoices, it would process each of them individually. There's a lot of configuration and ability to process and handle those situations that you would do in your initial setup.
Thanks, Patrick. Our next question is, what does the application do with an invoice in which the vendor is not already in PeopleSoft Supplier Master?
So typically, because the PeopleSoft supplier is not yet created, what you would do when you were in the verification screen is you wouldn't be able to obviously select that vendor because that vendor is coming from PeopleSoft itself. So what most organizations would do, and there would be other options, would be recommend that you go into PeopleSoft and enter that vendor and refresh the table so that you can select the right vendor. There would be other options, of course, but because vendor is your primary driver, I would think that you'd want to get that right in the extraction queue. And Joe, I don't know if you have anything to add there, but
yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Patrick. Yes, I agree with that, everything you said. And also, our solution adds in a third queue, not just a separation and a verification. It also adds in what's called a supervisor queue. And that's a perfect example of when an AP user may send a document to the supervisor queue to alert them to the fact that the vendor doesn't exist in the ERP. This can be done for several reasons. One, they can add comments to easily alert the supervisor to what the problem is. They can get the problem resolved quickly. And also, if you're basing reports on analytics based on how long things are staying in your verification queue, how long it's taking you to process invoices, it's a good idea to move it out of that queue to address that problem so that your analytics can be appropriately and accurately assessed.
Great. Our next question is, how many users do you have currently using this solution?
That's an
Lisa,
excellent
do you want
question.
to answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would know the answer to that, Lisa.
Yeah. In the U.S. currently, I think we have about 20. Globally, there's quite a few more. A lot of the companies use our OCR portion of the solution abroad, and I know there's over 1,500 customers using that portion, which is a big piece of our solution. So quite a few companies with experience to draw from.
Yes, oh, go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to add that the open imaging integration, which was really the game changer of leveraging the solution within PeopleSoft specifically, was only built last year. And again, it is a verified integration and it's working fantastically, but it's only about a little over a year old, I believe, Lisa. And so from the PeopleSoft side, that's why there's a few left. I know that they've been integrating as well to JD Edwards for quite some time.
Yes, JD Edwards, EBS, SAP, and PeopleSoft. And as Patrick said, yeah, a year with this new feature in PeopleSoft, and we are, as he mentioned, Oracle Validated Integrated Solution. So OVI certified, they call it.
Great. And our next question is, what is the accuracy rate of the imaging?
Well, it's not something we could put a specific number on because it's going to vary customer to customer. It really depends on the complexity of the invoices. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, it also really depends on the quality of the invoices. We ask that all invoices come in at 300 DPI at a minimum so that the OCR engine can appropriately read the information. But again, it's a tough question. We offer very high results because of things like validating the data against the ERP, because of things like a simple user verification screen where we provide color codes to pick out information that may be incorrect based on the system's best guess. But as far as an actual number, it's really an impossible thing to put on because it's going to vary account by account.
Joe, doesn't it learn over time, so the numbers tend to improve as they use the solution? Because
there's a training process now. It's separate from something I would do to go and train the users. The users can train the solution. So for those really tricky pieces of information on those complex invoices, you can actually specify a location, a piece of data, and relate it to a specific vendor number. So the next time those subsequent invoices come in from that supplier, it can easily pick up that formally tricky piece of information. So there are a lot of ways we can work to always improve the accuracy level, but it starts out at a very high level regardless because we have those sort of built-in non-template based rules to find things like an invoice number, a purchase order number. As long as the invoices are of good quality, the results will always follow.
Great. And the next question pertains to implementation, looking for kind of an average timeline for what it looks like to implement.
That's really hard to tell. I think as we talked about those levers earlier, depending on your volume, the methods that those are coming in, the quality of your data as it stands today in PeopleSoft, and then really whether or not you want to rework your workflow. There's organizations that say, we have everything, our workflow is designed, it's in PeopleSoft, and we're really happy with it, and we don't want to change anything. And that would be a shorter implementation versus an organization that said, we need to redevelop all of our workflows, we need to make sure they're all compliant. And so Sarah, for whoever started that or who asked that question, or for anyone, of course, as we speak to you coming up, it's something that I think we can help you get to a timeline fairly quickly, but it's not something that's a standard answer, right? Just because of the many levers that can be pulled.
One of the biggest factors is availability of the client's resources. If they want it to be brought up very quickly within, say, 10 to 12 weeks, then we just need a dedicated resource. So it really often our time frame is whatever the client needs, but it often has to do with how available their resources are to work with us.
We have a couple of questions that are coming in pertaining to the client base that uses the solution. The first one is if there are any financial institutions that currently use it, and then also kind of trying to gauge how many customers are actually using PeopleSoft 9.2 with this as well.
Lisa, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, I'm thinking actually as we speak. We have, the interesting thing is we have clients in pretty much every vertical, definitely financial services, but we also have it in absolutely everything else because, everybody has AP. So we're pretty pleased that the referenceable customers we have run the gamut of, from healthcare to financial services, manufacturing, utilities, all kinds of things. So that's good. And what was the other part of the question? I forget already. Sarah, it was industry and what else?
PeopleSoft specific customers.
PeopleSoft 9.2.
I don't know. Joe, do you have a feel for how many are on 9.2 versus not?
I don't. That's something I'd probably have to check with our engineering department, and I could provide numbers as a follow-up.
Sure.
And just for the value I can add to that question is I'm actually in the process of implementing this right now at a PeopleSoft 9.2 customer within the energy industry. So they are on 9.2 PUM 21, and we're implementing it here.
And what we can do too is we'll put together a PDF of all the questions that were asked and the associated answers and send it out to everyone on the call along with the slide decks and along with the recording of the webinar as well. So if you have any follow-up questions, just let us know. But the next question we have here is, does the user have to verify each scan?
No, the short answer, Patrick,
ahead,
you can handle it. The short answer is no. That user verification screen, we always recommend that the users use it, especially when they first start, because the solution is new to them. To become more familiar with how it works, we recommend that they look at each invoice and verify the data. But no, certainly once you're comfortable with the level of accuracy for a specific supplier, we could do what we call green channel that supplier, and it doesn't stop at that point at all. It takes unless it finds an inaccuracy, of course, that the solution wants to report. But no, if it meets the level of accuracy, it can flow right through and create the voucher without stopping.
Great. Next question is, after invoices are scanned, can the data be sent to custom tables rather than voucher staging tables?
That may be a technical question that we should take to another team member. From a technical standpoint,
I'd be hesitant to give an answer to that without an engineer present to expressly map out what can be done.
Right.
So we're happy to follow up with that individual.
The next question is, how is the system able to associate specific invoice lines with the proper PO line?
So that can be something that's automated. They're gonna extract the line items and it may match automatically, specifically, of course, if there's one line. But in that UI, which we didn't show that exact screen, but as the invoices come in, you can select the line that you want to match it to, and it's going to give you the line description, the amount available, if there's things like receiving on the item, so, are there any open to receive, or are there any open that you can apply it to? It'll give you warnings, for instance, if you're trying to apply it to an item that hasn't yet been received. And again, those are all things that we could show in depth down the road, but it can be either more automated or more, or the AP clerk themselves could match to it.
Patrick had a good point. I just want to point out that in the process of working with you and your particular needs, we do end up providing a custom demonstration that shows your company exactly what you're looking to see as we go through the process. So we're happy to do that.
Perfect. The next question is your user interface standalone or is it integrated into PeopleSoft?
It is standalone.
Perfect. And we'll do one more here, and then we do have several other questions that have come in. So we'll, like I said before, we'll put together that PDF of all the questions and then the associated answers and send that out. But for the sake of time here, we'll end it with this last question of how is the accounting string captured and sent to AP?
Joe, do you want to do that one, or do you want me to? I'm happy with either.
For your just like we were talking about before with the line matching, there is the ability to enter GL information for non-PO invoices at a sort of a detail level. It would be just an alternate version of the screen you would see for a PO or for a non-PO. You can enter your GL information. There's another alternative as well. Based on how the workflow is performed, some particular customers, their AP users are not the ones who would specify that particular GL coding information. So instead, they would select a coder, and that coder might be the first person in the workflow. They would receive notification that an invoice was awaiting their input for the GL information. And then that information is carried over through EIP and ultimately into the voucher once it's created.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. And like I said, there are a few other questions that are outstanding, but for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and end the webinar here, and we'll be sending out all the different questions and answers out to everyone who's registered. And if you happen to have a few more questions that are popping up right now, we will leave the portal open for the next few minutes where you can submit them. And then we're happy to answer anything that comes up after the webinar as well. After we send you the information, please feel free to follow up with us, and we'll be following up with you guys as well individually just to make sure we can answer anything that you might have. But thank you so much for joining today. We'll go ahead and end it here. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.